Hello, my name is Keith, and this is a series of videos providing a case management plan to achieve personal success. I measure success not by wealth, but by personal goal achievement and self actualization. This video is about developing your communication skills, and if you like these videos, please like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Why am I doing a video on communication skills? Well, to gain personal success, the ability to communicate is a necessity. Most of our conversation actually is not communication, it's just noise. To be successful, we must learn to communicate by listening. It takes practice, and if you're not used to these skills, you need to continue to do it over and over again. It may feel fake or put on at first, but practice does make perfect. Now, step one is to listen and observe. When you're speaking with someone, listen and concentrate on the speaker, not on what you're going to say. Most of the time, we're thinking about what we're going to say to the other person when we're talking, and we're gathering thoughts for our own dialogue rather than truly listening to what the other person is saying. Also, imagine the speaker's point of view. Where are they coming from? Instead of being heard or being right, try to understand the other person's point of view. How did they come to their conclusion? What events helped them form their thought process? And watch for vocal inflections, their enthusiasm level, the style of delivery, the facial expressions, and nonverbal clues. A substantial portion of our communication is nonverbal. In fact, researchers suggest that the percentage of nonverbal communication is 4 times that of verbal communication, with 80% of what we communicate involving our actions and gestures versus only 20% actually being conveyed with the use of words. So the first of these nonverbal clues are facial expressions. They're responsible for a huge proportion of our nonverbal communication. Consider how much information can be conveyed with a smile or a frown. The look on a person's face is often the first thing we see, even before we hear what they have to say. While nonverbal communication and behavior can vary dramatically between cultures, the facial expressions for happiness, sadness, anger, and fear are similar no matter where you are. Gestures. I gesture when I'm talking. Deliberate movements and signals are an important way to communicate meaning without words. Common gestures including waving, pointing, giving a thumbs up sign. Often gestures are arbitrary and related to culture. For example, in the U.S., putting the index and middle finger in the shape of a V with your palm facing out is often considered to be a sign of peace or victory. Yet, in Britain, Australia, and other parts of the world, this gesture can be considered an insult. Nonverbal communication by gestures is so powerful and influential that some judges place limits on which ones are allowed in the courtroom. Next are paralinguistics, that refers to vocal communication that is separate from actual language. Paralinguistic features communicated through voice can affect appraisals of confidence and evaluative judgments. This form of nonverbal communication includes factors such as your tone of voice, loudness, inflection, and pitch. For example, consider the powerful effect that tone of voice can have on the meaning of a sentence. When said in a strong tone of voice, listeners might interpret a statement as approval and enthusiasm. The same words said in a hesitant tone can convey disapproval and a lack of interest. Usually, if a person gets faster with their talk and higher pitch and louder in their talk, it means it's something that is more exciting to them. Next is body language and posture. Posture and movement can also provide a great deal of information. Research on body language has grown significantly, with popular media focusing on the overinterpretation of defensive postures such as arm crossing and leg crossing. While these nonverbal communications can indicate feelings and attitudes, body language is often subtle and less definitive than previously believed. But there are some things you can see with body language that is helpful. When someone is sitting and leaning forward to hear what you're saying, it usually shows that they're interested. If they're turning their away from you, or turning to the side, or their back away from you, that may show that they're not very interested in what you have to say. Next is proxemics. People often refer to their need of personal space. This is known as proxemics and is another important type of nonverbal communication. The amount of distance we need and the amount of space we perceive as belonging to us are influenced by very many factors. Among them are social norms, cultural expectations, situational factors, personality characteristics, and level of familiarity. I would also add your personal experience. Maybe if you were an abused person in the past, you might want more space than someone who hasn't been. The amount of personal space needed when having a casual conversation with another person can vary between 18 inches and 4 feet. A personal distance needed when speaking to a crowd of people is usually around 10 to 12 feet. Now, we just went through COVID, so we have had that experience of being 10 to 12 feet away from others. The eyes. The eyes play an important role in nonverbal communication with such things as looking, staring, blinking. For example, when you encounter people or things that you like, your rate of blinking increases and your pupils dilate. People's eyes can indicate a range of emotions, including hostility, interest, and attraction. People often utilize eye gaze cues to gauge a person's honesty. Actually, I'll put up a chart here on the video that shows specifically some different ways that you can read a person's eyes. Shifty eyes and an inability to maintain eye contact is frequently seen as an indicator that someone is lying or being deceptive. Haptics. Communicating through touch is another important nonverbal communication behavior. Touch can be used to communicate affection, familiarity, sympathy, and other emotions. Often used to communicate both status and power. High status individuals tend to invade other people's personal space with greater frequency and intensity than lower status individuals. Sex differences also play a role in how people utilize touch to communicate, meaning women tend to use touch to convey care, concern, and nurturance. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to use touch to assert power or control over others. And I would add also, if a person has an experience of being abused in the past, they may not want to be touched at all. And sometimes they'll tell you that. Many times they will keep it to themselves and just feel very threatened whenever you touch them. Appearance. Our choice of clothing, hairstyle, and other appearance factors also are considered a means of nonverbal communication. Appearance can alter physiological reactions, judgments, and interpretations. Judgments are easily made about someone based on their appearance. These first impressions are important, which is why experts suggest that job seekers dress appropriately for interviews with potential employers. Researchers have also found that appearance can even play a role in how much people earn. Attractive people tend to earn more and receive more fringe benefits, including higher quality jobs. Artifacts, objects, and images are often tools that can be used to communicate nonverbally. On an online forum, for example, you might select an avatar to represent your identity and to communicate information about who you are and the things you like. People often spend a great deal of time developing a particular image and surrounding themselves with objects designed to convey information about the things that are important to them. Uniforms, for example, can be used to transmit a tremendous amount of information about a person. A soldier will don fatigues, a police officer will wear a uniform, a doctor will wear a white lab coat. At mere glance, these outfits tell others that what that person does for a living. And that makes them a powerful form of nonverbal communication. The next step is about interruptions. What does interruptions communicate? Well, everyone wants to feel heard, but if you don't feel you are, the relationship can begin to erode. After all, consistent interruptions by the same person not only feel like a lack of respect for you and your thoughts, but they also demonstrate apparent self-centeredness. Interruptions also can make you feel insignificant and unimportant, and that what you're trying to say isn't worth being listened to. So the next step, and I think one of the most important steps in communication, is paraphrase to clarify, or paraphrase for accuracy. A paraphrase is an accurate response to the person who's speaking, which states the essence of what the speaker says in the listener's own words. To put it in another way, to paraphrase is to express the meaning of something written or spoken using different words to achieve greater clarity. So if I'm talking to someone and they're explaining something to me, what I would do is paraphrase what they just said in my own words. For example, let's say that my wife is talking about her day and what she did at work, and she's explaining the process of doing someone's taxes to me. So she says, one of my clients got all upset because they didn't receive the whole amount they expected from their tax return, and they threw a fit in their office. And then I would say, so they got mad at you because it was less than what they thought. Simple as that. You can paraphrase what someone says to you, and you can also paraphrase something you said, like how I did. So let's talk about what goes into paraphrasing, and I'll also share that when you're paraphrasing for your accuracy, when you're first starting to do this, it doesn't feel like something that's natural. It's something that you have to continue to do over and over again to become good at it, to become comfortable with doing it, because it is about listening to what the other person's saying and then paraphrasing that back to them, so that the communication continues, and the onus of that communication is on the person that you're listening to and not on yourself. So the essential elements of paraphrasing are first condensed. A good paraphrase is accurate. When people begin using that technique, they tend to be too wordy. A paraphrase should be shorter than what the speaker said. Should include only the essentials. An effective paraphrase reflects only the essentials of the speaker's message. It cuts through the clutter of details and focuses on what's central in the original message. Focus on the information. Another characteristic is that it focuses on the content of the message. It deals with the facts or ideas rather than on the emotions that the sender is expressing. Even though a firm distinction between facts and feelings is artificial, paraphrasing focuses on the content of the message. What is the message that is being conveyed? And then stated in the listener's own words. The listener summarizes and understands what they heard in their own words. If you're repeating the speaker's exact words back to them, that becomes parroting, and it stifles or dries up the communication. Whereas paraphrasing can contribute greatly to the communication between people, because once you paraphrase, that inspires the need on the person that you're speaking to continue that conversation. So here's some examples of paraphrasing. Person A says, I want to bring you up to speed on a particular project. I talked with Claire, and she has been meeting with people at the state level for weeks about the funding. Things sound up in the air. We should proceed with caution until we know more. One way we can paraphrase that statement is by saying, so the whole project is dependent on whether or not state funding goes through. Just a quick example, but there are many ways that you can use paraphrasing. Always remember, paraphrasing is very useful because it shows the person or people we are talking to that we are actively listening to them and we understand what they are communicating with us. It's also helpful when you're teaching or giving instructions to a group of people. To paraphrase is a great principle to use when communicating. The ability to paraphrase helps a whole lot, especially in meetings with important people in your career and your life. The next step is, the next level of communication is providing feedback and what I would call perception checks. Perception checking refers to finding out if your perception of someone's behavior is accurate. It is an essential skill in effective communication in both professional and personal contexts because it can help you clear up miscommunication and misunderstandings that arise due to humans' natural selective perception tendencies. People are not always the best communicators of their thoughts and feelings. A person might seem to be saying one thing, but really they mean something else. Therefore, it can also help to avoid conflicts. By gaining an accurate understanding of what someone wants to say, it can reduce the likelihood of offending someone or being offended. And when you're doing perception checks in your communication, you can look at the, how people are reacting to what you are saying, or how they are saying what they're saying. In other words, let's say someone starts getting faster in their speak, or their tone raises, or gets a little bit louder. You can do a perception check and say, your voice got a little bit faster when you're talking about that. It sounds like you're pretty excited about that. Is that right? That's a perception check. Or you can see that someone is, when they're talking, they look down and away from you, and looks down towards themselves, which usually means that you have touched on some type of feeling within them. So you can use that as a perception check. You can say, well, it appears to me that you may be feeling something about that statement that you just made. Would you like to say more about that? That is a perception check. Now, there are two types of perception checking. One is direct, the other is indirect. Direct perception checking involves asking the person you're speaking with if your understanding is correct, usually 3 steps. So describing the behavior observed, let's use the one I just did, the person who looked down. I see that you looked down when you said that. My interpretation of that would be, the second level would be interpretation. My interpretation of that is that we identified some type of feeling in that response. And then the third part of that perception check is clarification. So you ask if that is correct. So, I see that you look down, probably, addressing some type of feeling, if that's right. Is that correct? Indirect perception checking involves seeking additional information about the person's behavior by observing their facial expressions or how they act towards others. So there's a lot of different examples of perception checks. I'll just go through a bunch of them here. When in a relationship, you are being really quiet tonight. Did I do something wrong, or did you have a bad day? Just let me know what's wrong. Or in a meeting, I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying. Are you for or against the project? Help me get a clearer picture. Or if you're not hearing from someone, you usually call every day, but I haven't heard from you in almost a week. Did something happen, or did you go out of town? Give me a ring so I don't worry. So, on and on and on. Let's see if I can, let's say your conversation with the boss. You say you're happy with the report, but your tone sounds different. So I'm not sure if the report is all wrong or if something else is on your mind. Either way, just could you give me a little bit better clarification? It never hurts to do a perception check, because the end result of a perception check is getting the clarification you need so that there's no misunderstanding. Finally, there are other factors that also affect communication. One of those factors may be your attitudes or their attitudes. Personal prejudices can affect the communication that you have. How do different information levels affect communication? From a background working with disaster response, I know in the past it was obvious that there are a lot of organizations that use acronyms or abbreviations. Well, a lot of people aren't used to those acronyms, and those by using those acronyms, you're affecting the ability to communicate. Communication skills the lack of communication skills can affect communication. Someone who has issues with literacy may have more difficulty trying to get their point across as someone who doesn't. Different social systems can affect communication. Some cultures have stronger family connections, and those family connections can help affect those communications whereas someone who lives alone and doesn't communicate much with anybody, that social system may affect how they communicate. How do different sensory channels affect communication? Well, some people are more kinesthetic, some need verbal, the ability to communicate verbally, some people need pictures or visual ability. How do differences in personal experiences affect communication? Well, example I've already used a few times in this class is that abused individuals may have greater self-esteem issues and therefore may not be able to communicate in the way that you would hopefully like to see them do. And how do cultural differences affect communication? Well, different cultures have different ways to communicate. Example, in my experience working in a Native American community, the standard practice when I would go to visit one of their homes is that we would visit at the door. Where they would be standing on the inside of the door, I'd be standing on the outdoor, and we would visit there rather than letting me in and sitting like at the dining room table as we are tend to be used to in the Anglo culture. So those are some other factors that also affect communication. I would leave this by basically saying, if you don't get anything else out of this class, use those paraphrasing for accuracy skills. If you just learn just that one skill and practice it over and over again, it will make your life so much better and so much different and so much more productive. So if you like this video and would like to see more, I ask you to subscribe. Thank you.